NetSparker, the developers of desktop and cloud-based web application security scanners that enable you to automatically identify vulnerabilities in your web applications and web services. NetSparker scanners employ a unique and dead-accurate vulnerability scanning engine that automatically verifies vulnerabilities with their proof of concept. For more information, visit them on the web at netsparker.com or email at contact@netsparker.com. Recorded Future. They help security teams make more confident decisions faster. Recorded Future's technology automates broad collection and analysis of cyber threat data and delivers the rich external context you need to understand alerts and emerging threats. With real-time threat intelligence from Recorded Future, security teams respond to threats 63% faster and find undetected threats 10 times quicker. To get started, go to recordedfuture.com/securityweekly and sign up for the Recorded Future Cyber Daily. Every day, you'll receive an email with the top results for trending technical indicators, cyber news, exploited vulnerabilities, suspicious IP addresses, and more. Subscribe today and stay ahead of cyber attacks. Endgame's converged endpoint security platform is transforming security programs, their people, processes, and technology with the most powerful endpoint protection and simplest user experience, ensuring analysts of any skill level can stop targeted attacks before information theft. Endgame unifies prevention, detection, and threat hunting to stop known and unknown attacker behaviors at scale with a single agent. For more information, visit endgame.com. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. Quick announcement. We've got a new website that you can filter and find stuff on that new website. We're running a listener feedback survey. We want to anonymously collect information from our listeners so that we can improve the show. It is in the survey menu on the website, securityweekly.com. Check it out. This segment, we would like to welcome Mr. Bryson Bort, the founder and CEO of SCYTHE. Welcome him back to the show. Bryson, welcome back. Sporting the epic hoodie. It's very nice.
Game on, Paul. Game on.
Game on. I'm excited for this. And this is two big kind of announcements. One is a technical segment where you're going to show us how to simulate some ransomware. And the other is a very special announcement.
Yeah, we'll leave the listeners wondering about that one for a little bit.
Okay.
But so actually planning 2 demonstrations, doing the dangerous thing of doing it live. So, when you're working with synthetic malware, we're going to see how this all plays out. But we're going to do a ransomware simulation, and then we're going to show how to do a multi-staged advanced persistent threat, cyber, with lateral movement.
Fantastic.
Followed by a sexually conflicted unicorn demonstration.
Josh,
look, I'm laterally moving.
Fast. It's not my fault you're jealous.
Species dysmorphia is no laughing matter.
You made that up just on the fly for this.
He did just make that up, but it's pretty impressive.
We just want to know what Doug's going to say next. That's why we keep him around.
Man skills, man. Man skills.
Wow.
And
All
let's
right,
get
so
to it.
should I share my screen now, gentlemen?
Yes.
And when I say gentlemen, I clearly mean that term loosely.
Yes.
Very loosely.
Very loosely.
All right, we're going to go into our remote desktop here. Voila. All right. So, okay. So we're here. We're on a prototypical endpoint. So we are somebody's random computer in an enterprise. And what we're going to demonstrate here is how you would simulate ransomware in a production environment. Because obviously, actually ransoming their computer can be problematic. Turns out, unless you're the city of Baltimore, you don't want to do that, just for fun. That was a bad joke. I shouldn't have said that. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we have a predefined threat for ransomware that we've already created. I'm going to pull it up. And what this does is this communicates with HTTPS, and it already has built in the logic of how it's going to follow. So it's going to be a beachhead that lands, and then it loads some additional modules from the C2 server. And then what it's going to do is create some arbitrary, actually I have to name it. It's going to create some arbitrary files. Help if I can type. Security Weekly ransom. It's coming for you, Paul.
Excellent. It's just a simulation, right?
What was that?
It's just a simulation, right, Bryson?
Sure.
Yes,
Sure
it's
it
a
is.
simulation.
Sure.
So that's
what
how
she
we're
said.
going to show. So what I'll do is I'm going to launch it, because since this is a real world, it takes about a minute or two for the payload to actually run through all the commands and do what it's going to do. So what I'm going to do is get this started, and then we can chat a little bit about what it's doing while it's off running and doing it. So the deployment method is arbitrary. Obviously, like with all payloads, you can choose how to deploy it. So we're just going to run it locally here for sake of time.
Does that payload need to be whitelisted or anything, Bryson? Or is that all handled as far as the obfuscation and?
So that is user's choice. The base payloads are available. So the way it works is, and I'll show this more on the APT side. So right now, for what's happening is, I'm gonna move this out of the wrong button. I'm gonna move this out of the way because we're gonna see something pop up when it's done. So the way it works is you provide the specifications of how does this talk, and there are numerous variables about how things can talk that you can change through the GUI, as well as we provide a software development kit so you can build your own communication modules, and then what it can do. So what are its capabilities? And that's the base thing that the SCYTHE platform is then going to just in time build just those components together for your own unique payload. And so that payload is then available in 32 and 64-bit XE, DLL if you're Windows, shellcode, ELF for Linux, and then I always forget what the Mac extension is, but Mac as well. And here we can see it just popped up. So what's just happened here is that on this payload on our compromised host, it landed, and then we can see all the commands that it ran on its own. So it loaded some additional modules down, and then what it did is it created 5 arbitrary files on the local computer. And now we can see it's populated in the folder. So we've now made up 5 files that are 10 megabytes each. So the payload knew to do that. And then what it did is it used local encryption to encrypt them. Meanwhile, we have all the C2 traffic tracking all of those actions, as well as we now know that this computer was successfully, here we can move it over, successfully ransomwared.
Those transports are independent of the actual ransomware module. Those are just part of the SCYTHE platform still, correct?
So that's the communications method that you choose that's a part of that payload. So your ransomware can talk through any number of communication protocols. The ransomware module itself, though, here we can see the encrypted files, as well as we told it to download a text file from the internet that said, I've got all the files, give me money, call 8675309.
Nice. Very nice. Yeah. And so basically you created files on the system and then encrypted them to simulate ransomware.
Right. So what we have is host activity that ties to local encryption of files. In this case, we intentionally created files, so it's completely transparent to the user. We intentionally popped it up on their desktop to alert the user, although, of course, you don't have to do that. You could encrypt these files in some obscure directory where nobody would ever see it. For fun, we downloaded a ransom note. You don't even have to do that. But in terms of providing the full user experience, that's the complete cycle of doing that. So for the host activities, and then that all ties to the network communications back to the C2 server, which also allow you to correlate host and network activities from a detection and response perspective. And then back here at the SCYTHE server, we have the view of the enterprise to show all of the parts that have been ransomwared for a high-level paintball view.
Now, is the encryption the means of which it's being encrypted? Are you going to make that a module as well, like where you're doing something like AES, you're doing API calls for encryption using the Windows, using its own encryption algorithm?
Yeah, so right now it's using local Windows encryption, but this is probably as good a time as any to segue right into what we are announcing. So we are going to be launching what we call the marketplace last year. One of the cool things about our platform was that it's modular. You can put together whatever pieces you need to accomplish whatever you need to do for a red team or purple team assessment, or for the blue team to validate controls and remediation. And we provide a software development kit. That software development kit allows folks to build their own modules. And so what we're going to be launching at this marketplace is a number of the consultancies. Black Hills, for example, is one of the customers that we have that uses us. They will be able to build their own modules and threats and share or resell those on the marketplace with their brand. So the Black Hills brand will go up with modules that will be driving the extensibility of what this platform can do. So this is a real big pivot to where the community is going to be driving all the innovation of offensive assessment at the edge versus my team.
That's awesome.
And Bryson, this marketplace will be like, how well will you or not kind of like restrict access, right? Because what I find today is advanced pen test teams that are testing more advanced companies with mature security programs aren't really releasing all of their bags of tricks because things get signatures for them.
I had that same conversation with Dave Kennedy at Wild West Hackin' Fest, and we talked about the essentially the proliferation of what the good guys are trying to do and how it gets into bad guys' hands.
Yes, that too.
And so the marketplace is going to be restricted to enterprise customers and the contributors to the platform. Contributors will not be able to download other folks' stuff. They'll only be able to manage their own. So only the enterprise customers, which are mostly Fortune 1000s, are the ones who are going to be able to download these. And these modules don't work on their own. The modules are built to be integrated into the SCYTHE platform. So they're not the kind of thing that can really proliferate on their own.
Gotcha.
And on that note, the other thing that we're going to be adding is for consultancies, we're going to be providing what we call market intelligence. So we have a large backlog of requests that have come from enterprise customers to say, hey, we really wish it did this. Let's say, it talked through Dropbox. And those enterprise customers are going to be able to provide a bounty number, say $5,000, $10,000, to the first consultancy that is able to deliver that module that does that. And then, of course, they'll be able to resell that module on their own through the marketplace, having hit the bounty.
That's awesome.
What are these modules written in?
Good question. So right now, they are only available in C code. In a month, we will be migrating to Python. So there's going to be two elements to that. The first is through the marketplace, you'll be able to build modules that you can write in Python. And then in a later release, how that's going to work into the roadmap, and this is a big thing that a lot of red team operators have asked for, is the payloads will be able to have their own integrated Python interpreter. So you'll be able to run Python commands on the fly with all of your payloads.
So it won't simply be like PyDexe, it's going to be bring your own interpreter as far as the Python side? Nice.
Yep, we're building that.
That's awesome.
Interesting.
Is there going to be a free academic version we can use at school?
So that's funny you say that. We already have one university as a customer, and they have built their entire curriculum around the platform because it's an easy way for an instructor with all of the offense abstracted for them to bring realism into the classroom to teach host and network forensics, analytics, and response.
Nice.
Yeah.
If I could afford it, I'd give it a shot.
It's more affordable than you realize.
I'm
so
throwing
actually,
you softballs here. So yeah, there you go. You got one.
I hate getting to that part for this kind of thing, but no, seriously, we have special rates for partners and universities because that's not where we make money. Where we make money are the large companies that really need the whole integrated workflow, and the fact that this saves all of their teams across DevSecOps, blue team, red team, a lot of time and money.
You got to train the future. I mean, that's what the forensics companies learned, was if they started giving this stuff to universities, they weren't going to sell it there anyway. And then all of a sudden, people are graduating, going, "This is what I want to use."
So as part of this, Bryson, what's the kind of the overall big vision? What are the big features that are in the works that are not available currently?
Sure. So the thing that's also going to come out with our next release, and this is where I give the the business answer, which is we are planning for this to be released in January. And the engineering answer is probably February or March, because that's how that always works.
Yep.
Is that the platform is going to be Turing complete with a virtual file system. What does that mean? What that means is all of these modules right now, they can do a certain amount of logic on their own to go into the environment, but most of it's going to come from you automating them to do exactly certain things, and it still requires a lot of manual operation. Well, and don't cringe at this term, but imagine machine learning in malware. And I don't mean machine learning as in this thing just does everything, but that modules can be taught to work with each other based on what they learn in the environment. So if you do credential theft over here, that module can pass that information to the privilege escalation module, which can automatically consume it and locally escalate privileges. Wow. And then if I have a discovery module over here that uses Active Directory to discover all of the hosts that are around it, then I can match that to the lateral movement module, which will automatically consume all of those IPs and run itself to laterally move through all of them. That's what I mean. That's going to come with that kind of thing.
Does that persist, and then over time it gets even better? I mean, does it just keep building on itself? So you have, after years of use, you've really got this like really sophisticated environment that maybe is unmatched anywhere else.
Honestly, that's really user's choice. If you were to have a campaign alone persist and continue to work and build up this knowledge, certainly that campaign can do that.
Yeah.
But the value that we see in the platform is the ability to continually run lots of different campaigns at scale.
No, I like both. I mean, I like both. I do. I like both those ideas. I like having like a persistent platform that I've always got out there that I put my best tricks in, so it can learn, I can learn, and then I've also got my isolated stuff that I'm doing on a one-off. So I'd like test this, see what it does.
How is that scripting?
We're going to blame you when
written?
Skynet comes into existence, and it's not my fault.
Hey, I for one welcome I welcome our new overlords. I just want to get on the record of stuff.
Oh, you're a suck up in advance. That you're 20 to 30 years ahead of your time in terms of sucking up to our robotic overlords.
Yeah, when you're all asking me for permits for life, you'll see.
Okay, meat bags.
Joff denied.
What are those scripts being written in? Like, how are you handling the scripting, or I guess the development of that scripting language?
You're talking about for the Turing complete system?
Yes.
So all of that will be managed inside the GUI. So the GUI will present to you essentially modules will be able to consume these things. So all of your variables are defined for the module, and then you're able to essentially, variable to action to other module to variable.
Nice. Okay.
I want it.
Bryson, along those lines, are there kind of like AI components or in the roadmap that, I basically give it a direction, right? I don't have to give it specific techniques to deploy the payload or specific techniques to phone home, but it kind of learns from the environment and does some of that stuff on my own with like my direction, not necessarily specifically like try SSH and try this method.
No, so it's not AI. This is you give it specific parameters, and it will go and learn the environment within those parameters, consume them, and then as you've given it that logic, use those to grow. So this thing is not thing is not learning so much as a more advanced way to interact with the environment on the logic you've given it. I mean, going back to 2 years ago when we first had this conversation, and I remember Joff's raised the question. He's like, "Are you replacing the red team operator?" And I don't see this platform ever replacing the red team operator. All we're doing is making it easier to take red team as a function to the next level.
But it's kind of a fly-by-wire for the red team operator, so you're facilitating their ability to do this very quickly.
Correct.
Yes. As well, the way I look at it is we're taking the 80 to 90% rework off of a red team operator's plate and allowing them to, because the reason they're a red team operator, the reason they have that expertise is that human element of being really good at thinking on the edge.
Yep.
Well, now your whole job gets to be the edge because we're taking the rework out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I remember Bryson and I having that conversation, and I related to him at the time that not so much. I wouldn't call it so much red team as I would call it purple team. So we do an engagement where we do a cooperative scientific test basically with a customer, and a lot of that is kind of routine work. And if you can automate the routine work as you escalate the, as I would call it, the noise level of your various payloads and your commands and things that you're landing in that environment, then, as Bryson just said, you're taking the grunt work, for lack of a better word, away from the operator and allowing them to think about the more sophisticated aspects, perhaps implement some new tests that can be further automated down the road. So it's going to be something that you can build on yourself, and I think that's where the platform here has got some advantages. Although I admit, Bryson, I'm guilty of not exercising the platform as much as I should have. But now that you're at this position, I think things have matured a lot. I'm probably going to look back into it, and we can see where it goes.
Well, actually, I want to call that out because I've had number of conversations over the last 2 years throughout industry, and that conversation with Joff was a very defining moment for us at the very beginning in terms of understanding the concern and the perspective. Another conversation that I want to call out was a really difficult conversation I had with Matt Toussaint a year ago, and Matt was very critical of where we were at that moment. And it was great because we made some substantial changes based on that. And so the biggest thing that I just want to sort of thank you, I mean, in this case, you, Joff, to Matt, and numerous others who we've had all of these conversations with over the years, that's shaped the platform. We've listened. And at the end of the day, that has meant a lot to us. And what I would recommend to anybody in the community is go and talk to the vendors. Say what you like, say what you don't like, give your opinion. A good vendor will listen to you. And that's the same advice I would give to the vendors, which is listen to the community. At the end of the day, you only get one shot for somebody to try out your idea, no matter how wonderful you think it is. Both sides benefit, and we all as a community benefit from making all of these ideas better together.
Hey, so let me go ahead and clarify my comment too. The reason I'm guilty of not doing enough with the platform is because pretty much I delegated it to Matt. So I seeded those conversations after Bryson and I were literally leaning over a piano at DerbyCon, which, if I remember correctly. And
it was
said,
the piano
my God,
in the back end.
Later on, I just don't have the time for this. And so Matt really took it up, and Matt has had some very constructive follow-on conversations. So really glad to see that has gone places. And I think you're onto something, to be honest. And I thought so at the time, and I still do think so.
Is leaning over a piano some kind of Australian thing? Is it like?
I think it's a euphemism.
Yeah, I thought it was a euphemism.
There was just a baby grand piano there in the hallway. What am I going to say?
Joff, don't worry. Anything we say that's literal, they're going to take out of context.
Yeah, you can't win.
We remember the truth.
I'm guilty of doing that as well. So, hey, fair game, right?
So, Bryson, given those conversations, when you talk to, let's take red teamers as the first example. When you talk to red teamers today that are using the product, what's the most impactful thing that they're doing with the product that's helping them the most?
Sure. So I think this is where we go to the phrase du jour, which is MITRE ATT&CK. Yep. And MITRE ATT&CK is something, to do right, is actually very hard. Because you need to, today's red team is really good at the traditional hacker getting in. I call it the surgical strike, right? I get a 1-to-1, I get in, I own domain, and I now have all the crown jewels, and I drop mic and I'm done. That's my report. Whereas a customer's like, okay, well, that's great, but I want you to do a MITRE ATT&CK on me. And it's kind of like, well, how do I do that? Like, I need to now do all these different forms of attacks, all of these different forms of communications, and all these pieces. And how do I do that? And that's part of how the traditional breach and attack simulation space has come about, because they're like, well, let's turn that into a checklist. And that's really the tension with the red team consultancies and the way the enterprises have been approaching this to some degree, because the enterprises are going, well, if I just install some agents here and I just run these checklists on host and at network, I've validated my controls and I've now gotten an attack view. Whereas the consultancies are going, yeah, but that's not real world hacking. Like, that's not an attack, because an attack is I've done something, I've learned some information, and then I use that information to go here. So tying it back into attack, they don't exist as checklists. They exist as states. It's like a chessboard. I can't, like, where the state of the chessboard is affects what my next move is. And MITRE ATT&CK is basically saying you have these attacks available at these states of the chessboard. And if you can't do that, you're not doing a real attack.
It's like a shifting set of patterns on that attack framework, though. So I was calling it Rorschach tests, where you're looking at attack and you see all these different patterns, and if you could play them, like a whole bunch of them, you would almost see this animation of something going, would be a real world attack. Whereas, like, they have this very static view of it. It's like, bang, there it was. But if you could play a long attack on the or a long, a whole incident on the framework, it would be like this animation of things going on.
Well, I think attackers and defenders would look at various paths and think of them as very linear, and that attackers will take the very same path, where many of those paths might start out the same. And Bryson, what I hear you saying is, at a certain juncture, now there's 3 or 4 different roads I can go down, and I just happened to chose, door number 2, and then I wrote my pen test report, right? And the customer's left going, well, okay, if we close that door, like, what's saying they can't take these other paths? And then there's like a million other paths. How do you model what all the various paths are and then prioritize them for the customer so that they can start?
So it is like chess, like he said. It's like, any chess game starts at one position and it ends at one position, but there's a long, different, varied path in the middle that could have a lot of different shapes, forms, and I like that. This
is one of the major problems that commercial industry has faced when you look at red teams versus like military red teams, where they're ongoing, or even APTs where you're simulating or emulating these particular threats. These are extended engagements. They've got, not unlimited budget, but they've got extended time frames, extended things. They're going after a lot of things. So we've always had the return on investment and budget to contend with in the commercial space, where we're trying to emulate a sophisticated adversary while doing it within a certain time frame or budget, and then trying to be as comprehensive as possible. But that is, without a tool where we're wasting a lot of time setting up, getting initial access, handling a lot of the various check marks and comms. These are things that obviously, Bryson, you're addressing in a lot of your platform here, is eliminating a lot of the heavy lifting and work while still maintaining good OPSEC, good emulation, and then leaving the surgical stuff and the comprehensive coverage to the tool itself.
But also it's multidimensional. It's not just this attack was successful. It's at what point, whether it was a success or failure, was I caught somewhere in the chain, right? That's the other dimension. And what's my dwell time? Do you test dwell time? Is that like a measurement that we can get from the product, Bryson?
We can get dwell time, so you can actually do all the metrics of response. When did your technology first identify something? When did the human analyst first identify that something was an anomaly? And then how long did it take for you to identify the extent and understand what it was, contain it, and then remediate it? All of those are metrics of response and resilience that we can give you.
Because that's really important, because, that determines whether you get caught, too. I mean, if you say, well, I could sit here for 6 weeks and figure this out, that's different than if you can do it in 6 minutes.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that's very important.
So back on the tradecraft thing, I just want to show something really quickly. I wasn't planning. Does my screen share show up?
Yes.
Okay. So here's a compromised host and a campaign. So we can see at a high level what host has been compromised, what's active, what's loaded and available on it, and then what was the heartbeat of the last time that the compromised host, the payload there, checked back in. So high level understanding. And then we can go in there and we can see who did what, where, what, when, and how, all there. But then we have the ability for manual operations. So we can click, and we now have emulated shell on box. And I use that phrase intentionally because let's say that this campaign's tradecraft was to talk through steganography, which is a module we have. You provide a directory of images. All of the traffic in C2 and data exfiltration is going to be embedded inside pictures that then goes through encrypted web traffic. Talk about really hard to find. Now, I'm not aware of any shell ability to talk shell to any box that allows you to do it through steganography.
And you thought our memes were just funny, Bryson.
They have a purpose. So here, what happens is the operator is presented with a shell that they're used to working with. But on the back end, all of the communications the server's going to translate those into the tradecraft protocol, communications protocol, consistent with that adversarial campaign. The payloads on the far end are all going to then interpret that and then turn it back into like its shell action. So just an example of where we're maintaining consistency of APT tradecraft, but meanwhile presenting what looks like a shell to the operator.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Something else to show real quick. So we're going to do Scary Security Weekly APT, Scary Swapped. So here's steganography, what I was talking about. We also include Google Sheets and Twitter. So you can use Google Sheets domains and Twitter with valid accounts. We're going to keep it simple right now. So I was talking about the ability to change things inside the...
Now, can it change things on the fly? Can it go, I was caught doing HTTPS, so I'm going to switch to some other exfiltration in C2 channel?
That's coming on the roadmap. So you'll be able to do alternate C2 channels. Mm-hmm. You can have different payloads from different campaigns work together. Mm-hmm. And then we also offer SMB for internal coordination between payloads as well.
Nice.
So there is kind of what you're talking about, but not the complete failover communications.
If I deploy multiple payloads, one of them is success using steganography, which I can imagine is wildly successful. The other ones kind of use that as a proxy.
Yep.
Yeah. So far, our steganography has never been caught.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
So the other thing is when we're looking at emulation, I have yet to see anybody else do this, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but if you look at the way an actual APT works, they work in stages. Mm-hmm. I'm a stage 0 beachhead. I can't do anything other more than land, feel safe, and then I'm going to call home and bring in something of interest. Like now I'm going to bring the crown jewels down because APTs don't want their good things to get burned, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So campaigns are not monolithic. Mm-hmm. So we have that same capability. What we're going to do is we're going to build a very basic stage 0. We can see the logic here. We are going to introduce a delay. So we're going to wait 10 seconds after detonation. Pretty much all host defenses are defeated by just waiting after detonation. Sounds simple, but it really works. And then we're going to start pulling down additional capabilities. So I want to see what's around me. I'm going to start a keylogger. What else do we want to do? We want to persist so we survive reboot, and Mimikatz to steal stuff. So first thing we're going to do as soon as we land with the keylogger, we're going to start running that. Then we're going to do Mimikatz, and then we're going to do discovery. Also to demonstrate the marketplace. So the way marketplace, I talked about how logos come with it. So here's Red Canary's Atomic Red Team. So different consultancies get to take the credit for the techniques and the modules that they create, and that'll be presented to the end users. So, okay, so we've just created a threat. So I'm now going to download this quickly as well. So we'll see that pop up here. And then we'll actually see it go through the whole steps of bringing down the additional capabilities, turning itself into a stage 1 because those modules are dynamically built on that compromised host's payload. Any second now.
You said those payloads are built based on a dynamic keying. Are you setting that keying up when you're building the campaign, like only fire if it has this domain or this particular user or this environment variable. Is that a thing in that?
Yes, you can do that.
Okay.
Bryson, can I just drop this whole thing into a virtual network and turn it loose, or is it a pre-built scenario?
So we just built up a scenario. So at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're just creating just-in-time built payloads. Like I said, XE, DLL, ELF, shellcode, and Mac that you can deploy however you want.
Okay.
Doug, you're looking for the window that says exploit, aren't you?
I'm looking for the window. All right, there we go. So it's up. What's it doing? All right, so here you can go. You can see it pulled down these additional capabilities, and then it started running. Something failed. Oh, all right. Oh, sorry. This is my ransom demo. This is the wrong one. What do they call it? Scary swapped?
Scary swap.
Yeah, scary swap.
Okay. Well, I don't. This is the disadvantage of doing the live demo right now. My malware is not executing. What's that?
It seems underwhelming. It's very stealthy.
It's so stealthy you can't even tell.
Damn, you're good.
Well,
You know,
all right. Well, anyway, assuming that works, you would see this, and then you would actually see all those pieces coming out. So I'm 1 for 2.
It's okay. You're doing live demos.
Yeah.
Switch back to handsome Bryson Bort. And all is well. Doesn't matter if it worked or not. We switch back to Bryson.
Now, do all the dynamic stuff that you're building in there, where you're adding different capabilities and dragging and dropping, and then you're going to have the marketplace? Are those, without releasing to the marketplace, are you going to have a private repository and be able to have some of those customizable by the user? Obviously, that would be without access to source code, right? You have certain limitations. So is that customizable?
So first, we give partners access to source code. So that's not an issue. And then second, certainly on-premise servers are a deployment model. So we do SaaS or on-premise. The on-premise allows you to build your own custom arsenal that nobody else can see.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so conceivably you could have a red team, I have customer. They're like, hey, I want you to do some custom stuff. And we're like, hey, use Scythe. We'll build custom modules for you, and then you can simulate our attacks. Yep. Maybe we did an adversary simulation lasted 6 months, and they're awesome. Like, I need to be able to run this stuff, ad hoc to make sure that I'm putting in the right defenses. That makes perfect sense.
Now, red teams can do that without even going to the marketplace if they wanted to have their own private exchange of those kinds of modules.
I can see certain customers wanting that. Right?
I'm familiar with it.
That's
now,
awesome.
Is that the same for C2 channels? Is that going to be a module and or marketplace? Okay.
Yeah. So C2 channels and capabilities are the two modules. Threats are where you have predefined the specifications of communications and capabilities, and then the actions of what they do. Those are the threats that go in the threat catalog. Those are essentially, we call those WordPress for malware. It takes 15 to 30 minutes to just make sure that the logic is doing exactly what you want it to do. And you've now effectively emulated a real world threat. And then the third option is we are aware of at least one consultancy that wants to provide a separate PE that does transforms off of Scythe payloads. So that's a third thing that's going to be available in the marketplaces, those kinds of things that does different things to what Scythe creates, so that there are different capabilities for more interesting on-host options.
Well, different behaviors and signatures, which, because inevitably some endpoint is a vendor, right, is going to pick up on this, whether on accident or on purpose, or whatever, right?
On purpose, Paul. They do it on purpose.
I'm trying to be like politically correct here, but you know what I'm saying. But if you've got that transform, right, that's basically transforming the code on the fly, it makes that almost obsolete and irrelevant.
Yep. So we have one of the best in the business. You all know and love them, but I can't tell you who's going to be offering that.
It's awesome.
So
Love it.
I like it.
I had a question about the bounty stuff. You mentioned that you were going to have the opportunity for for folks to develop a solution that you don't have for a bounty for whatever money. And I started thinking about Doug's education piece and how the product does so many things, and there are interesting solutions that could be added. It'd be an interesting classroom exercise, and if the instructor had the answer as well, it might be a very interesting scenario to act on. Or am I way out in left field?
I'm not following with the bounty and the.
So they say we need SCYTHE to do this really cool thing, and somebody develops it.
Mm-hmm.
That could also be an education opportunity for, say, a class Doug had if he could get the answer as well.
Goes back in the marketplace, and then if the instructor actually has the answer, you could give it as an assignment and sort of reiterate the whole problem and say, here was something that really happened. See if you can beat it as well, and that would be a really cool thing to be able to do.
That's a really neat idea. We hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, from like both the attack and defense. Like you said, Doug, you take it, you put it in a virtual lab, you get some students, and you hope that the best and brightest students are coming up with really innovative defense and attack scenarios. In that the attacks get into the marketplace, the defenses hopefully get publicized, or maybe not, or maybe to a subset, right? I mean, again, it's discretion.
I mean, you would have people lined up wanting to take that class right now if you advertised that on campus and said, here it is, it's a challenge, it's the whole class. Like I love to do practical classes, and if you just said here's a series of challenges, complete them all and you pass. This is then it turns into these older models that used to exist, like Third Pig and some of those things that we used to use for classes. And using tools like that really trains people well. I mean, they're going to learn the tools that they're going to use tomorrow.
I like bringing that innovation. I mentioned I was reading the Stephen Levy book about hackers. And before the days of the internet, when manuals were scarce and that's what you had to learn, I mean, literally hacking and the best and the brightest went on to work for companies and teach at the university and all that kinds of stuff. And this is fostering a similar kind of environment, which is really pushing the edge.
I really like it. Not to mention, it brings them right into the fold of what's going on, and I think that's very cool. And that attracts the good students of cybersecurity.
Right.
That's the people then you want to hire.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was thinking. Exactly.
I've met some instructors out here who part of the problem is coming up with real-world actionable, as you're saying, relevant content, as well as a platform to deliver the cool idea we have, when we're sitting around drinking a beer thinking of what would be great to teach the students. How do you actually do it? I mean,
that stuff takes a great deal of time to build simulations for class, because you have to think it up. Then you have to actually do it.
Build it.
Then you have to build it. Then you have to sort of work backwards. It's like writing a mystery novel. Then you have to work backwards to the beginning of it and write the case. But if you had these things that pre-existed and you know what the solution is, you can start there to build your class and say, I'm going to pick these 12 things out of this marketplace of things that have been done. So I think making those things available is great. Once they've been solved and people have been paid for them. I mean, there is an ethics issue there. People always get nervous about that, like you're revealing, these really dangerous things to students. And we get that all the time. They're like, you're going to teach a pen testing class. Like, you're going to teach them to break into stuff? Well, I don't know. Like, no, nothing you have. No, not at all. Campus would never be compromised by this.
No.
We don't use WinRM.
Campus is in a plastic bubble. It can't be compromised.
It's not WinRM domain admin shares anywhere.
No, that's totally fake news.
Yeah, all made up.
So, Bryson, if folks want to learn more and get a trial of the software, obviously speak to your team first before doing so and register. They can go to securityweekly.com/SCYTHE. And then the marketplace, what's the rough time frame that you were mentioning for that?
We're going to formally announce with a number of partners at RSA in February.
Sweet. That's awesome.
Excellent.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
And some of those other roadmap features are in the similar kind of time frame, right? Like you mentioned.
Like I said, they're going to be available in January.
Bryson,
Not January.
I get it. Believe me.
Did you not read the pamphlet?
I totally understand that from multiple
So
perspectives.
tell everybody, come
Read the
look for
pamphlet.
Bryson.
There it
Unicorn
is,
at
right
RSA
there.
in February.
So yeah, Marketplace will be in February. We'll be launching it, and then the Turing Complete platform with virtual file system. Most likely that'll be February-ish.
Sure. Fantastic. Bryson, thank you so much for coming back on Paul Security Weekly. And with that, we will take a short break. Come back with the security news for this week. Stay tuned.